My name is Guillermo Gomez. I'm also a teacher at Lincoln High School, teaching social justice. And so welcome to Revolution Pedagogy, going beyond the classroom and into our communities and in search for true liberation.
Did you want to start with this?
Sure. All right, so how about we wait? It's up to you. We can start passing around.
Right, yeah.
We'll wait until the one.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, so like we mentioned, we're from Lincoln High School, a school very similar to this school. Brand new campus, opened about a year ago. It's one of the oldest schools in San Diego. It's right there in the urban center of San Diego, East San Diego. They built it with a school, small school model. Kind of think it as 4 small schools. We work at the 9th grade Center for Social Justice, so it's a school for 9th graders. But we also have 3 other campuses, one for arts, engineering, and public safety. So we're from 9th grade Center for Social Justice, and this school, as you can see, is pretty new, brand new. It costs about $126 million to build.
Let me add on to that. One thing that was extremely key in our community, it's a traditional urban neighborhood, you know, mostly minorities are living in the neighborhood, Black and Latino predominantly. And when this school was built, they were talking, a lot of society in general, our community was talking really bad about they don't deserve this, 126 million is a waste of money, so on and so forth. So we're trying really hard to get our kids to understand that we have to prove to them that this was not a waste of money. So that was a big deal during this time, and it's still controversial today, so especially having social justice there.
Well, also what I want to mention also that also a lot of people suffer when they built this school. A lot of people were displaced, and so it's also a movement of gentrification. Okay, we're very close to downtown San Diego, so as you know, we have a brand new baseball park, and so that neighborhood is trying to be gentrified. And I think the school was built with that purpose, because a lot of people are actually our football fields, a lot of people's homes were destroyed, a lot of people were displaced. So I think that's very important to mention. So anyway, so let's talk a little bit about our little experiment called Social Justice course at Lincoln High. And I just, we want to begin right off the bat that we definitely are not naive, and we don't think that a social justice course is the solution for social change. Even though the school is an open system, we know that it's not conducive to be open for change. So we knew right off the bat that something like social justice was just a name, that we were going to push the limits, and we were going to just build a little pocket of resistance for social justice. So we know right off the bat that there's no way, no methodology in any school is going to work if it's not tied to a social movement in the community. So go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, and another thing about the idea of social justice is that it's not going to save every single child. Not everybody's going to come. I think a lot of times when you talk about social justice, you think every kid in your school is going to be good all of a sudden and taught them these great ideas. Like you said, we're not naive enough to believe that, but they have created some great products, and these are some examples of them, and you heard her speak and so on and so forth. Zakina would have been a great student no matter what, where she was, but we were able to catch her before she got, the consistent, systematic, information that they traditionally get. And now you can see what we can create, slowly but surely. And this is only our 2nd year, so we're still developing curriculum and so on and so forth. But we still, we've got a lot of work to do, and we're trying to make that progress.
All right, so the good thing is that we had the freedom to organize and to come out with our own curriculum, and we don't want our curriculum to reflect that regular social studies curriculum. Luckily, we only had to teach about 3 standards, right? Constitution,
right.
stuff. So knowing that, we did want to create a democratic classroom with the practice of critical pedagogy. It was very important for us to respect every culture. Okay, we didn't want to just focus on the African and Rasa culture. It was very important for us to build in other cultures as well. We also believe very strong in linguistic collectivism. We believe that all languages should be respected on campus, so we definitely addressed that. But the most important is that we wanted to deconstruct history. So a social political consciousness was a key to this curriculum.
And the big thing too about this is not whether, the biggest thing for me is getting students to feel like they have some power. And these students obviously have bought into it, and we're loving that. But it is always definitely difficult because this system is corrupted quite a few of us. whether we want to admit it or not, we all come with some damage, some damage from the system. And it's hard for us sometimes to even overlook that, because if you have a kid who has attitude with you at that time, you don't think, oh, well, the system did this, so I'm going to be nice to him. So it's a constant struggle trying to battle back and forth with yourself and what should you do, what should you not do. I constantly struggle, because teaching ninth graders, I used to teach seniors and juniors, and now I'm teaching ninth grade, and I constantly struggle. How much of it do we have to, keep in the box? Like, because regardless of what happens in our class, they're going to get passed on, and the system hasn't changed anywhere else. So when they get passed on, I still have to have those basic things. You have to know how to write a paper. You have to know how to do these things, and so on and so forth, to get on to the next level. So I struggle constantly with what do I expect from them, because I do understand they've been damaged and just passed through and come to us with lacking a lot of skills, but I still have to have those expectations. So that's a tough one for me. Is what do you grade them on? How effective is their writing, and so on and so forth. So I do battle with that. But the cultural especially is big, because the kids need to know they have a culture. A lot of kids, especially from an African American perspective, our culture was taken at the beginning. We weren't allowed to keep a culture, and our situation is a little bit unique in the sense that we were forced here. And every other group got to come here voluntarily, and they also, besides Native Americans, they came voluntarily and were allowed to keep their culture. So with African American students, it's really hard sometimes to connect, because their culture is often slave culture, and that's all they identify with. And when you call them African, someone get offended. It's like, wow, that's really the colonialism and the systematic defeating of their own history. And so we constantly battle with that, trying to get all the kids involved. Asian American, just Asian history in general. It's like, how much information do they really get about who's, leaders, what leaders did they have that were successful, revolutionaries, and so on and so forth. So it is a struggle, and we're trying to incorporate as much as we can. Obviously, you can't incorporate all of it in one school year, and we're still building it. The language is another barrier, because a lot of the kids who are so beat up by this system believe, oh, if you don't speak English, speak English, speak English. And they don't even understand how important it is to have a language. And especially, like I said, from an African American perspective, we have no language that's our own anymore. And we're speaking the oppressor's language, and so on and so forth. So getting those kids to comprehend and understand that it's okay to have different languages and not just English, because at one point in time, your people had their own language. And instead of feeling like frustrated someone else is speaking, you should kind of feel jealous that you don't have your own language anymore. You should be proud of those people who do have that, or just be proud that of the people who do have the language. Let them be proud of who they are and what they do. So that was another big issue, or another big thing we try to connect in the class.
Hold on, I don't think we're done.
I think we have the video.
Really?
Video.
Okay.
You have to start from the beginning.
Sorry. Maybe you can turn the lights on?
Yeah, turn the lights on.
This is a video of pretty much all of our activism that has been done since last year when we were 9th graders and 11th graders. So, don't have speakers. Just kind of to explain it, this newspaper right here kind of has like an idea of what we've been doing in regards to the gun ranges. And so the main thing that we've been focusing on is getting the weapons training out of our schools, and we got the vote. But recently, like a week ago, the person who actually represents our school district voted against us and is now trying to change the resolution so that the gun program is not ended to the end of the school year. But this is just really what we've been doing.
But give you an overview of what's going on, what the struggle was like. We had it was a coalition that we created within different organizations in the community and in our school, Lincoln High School. And what happened is that we joined together and we thought we saw the injustice that were going on in the community, also with the militarization, but also going on, that it's a contradiction that they tell us in school about, education. Education is important, you gotta read books, you gotta go do this. But then when you see that, when you realize that, they're teaching students how to shoot guns, how to shoot a pellet gun, and that gives you an idea of how is that going to help a student to get a higher education.
And like I think Mr. Ochoa had mentioned it when he introduced you, there was a small group called SIA, Students in Action, and this is one of the sit-ins that we arranged last year around the budget cuts to educate the students on the budget cuts that were happening in our school. And my comrade Xavier, he's not in here, but through ARSO, we got to go to the Impedum conference and meet Chairman O'Malley. And so just kind of through the activism that we do at school, we got to touch bases with people on an international level and got to learn about the democratic process of voting and learning about revolutionary type of stuff that happens all over America pretty much. And so these are different pictures from the slides that were presented there, and just really being around like a revolutionary organization that's not just in school or in the community, but really it's just like you feel like you're almost in the presence of a celebrity pretty much, but not on that level, but it felt really good to be in the presence of people who have collectively gone together and created all these revolutionary theories and just spoke real truth that represented you as an African person or as a person of color. And this was the flag raising ceremony, and it was a beautiful thing, it really was. It was great. And then these are all the members. And as you can see, it's not only people of African descent that were there.
And on some of these pictures, we thought, like on this one, this is a solidarity food drive that Lincoln Metro does. We do it on every, constantly, like we had 2 times this year we're going to do it. We're still going to do it on March. But what we do is, a lot of us know that, there's campesinos that work in the fields and they work hard. But a lot of us don't realize that those people live in, canyons. They live under the canyons. They live, in the conditions that they live in is hard. So what we do is we try to, help them out. Instead of, donating it to different programs, we see that, we need to help them out because the government isn't doing it. So what do we have to do? We have to step up to help our raza or gente, Yes.
And I just kind of want to add that, like when we go on the solidarity drives, it's the most physical struggle that some of us have experienced so far, because a lot of them, like you go up hills and you'll take like heavy water and food and stuff, but then you'll see the campesinos walking past you just like it's nothing. And like sometimes you want to complain like, oh, I want this new pair of shoes or I want to go shopping. It's like these people literally have nothing, so we really don't have anything to complain about. And the only thing that we can really do is help them as much as we can, and also we go down there and give it to them ourselves. Like Jonathan said, we don't give it to like Red Cross or anything. We go and we give it ourselves because it gives you more of an effect of how it really feels to live their life.
And we do a lot of fundraising activities, just to be able to do events that we host, like movie nights. We hold forums to give students food sometimes during the meetings that we have. We hold fundraising car washes. We sell tosilocos in our school. But pretty much, it gets students involved in school and actually gets us out in the school about who we are and what we're doing, as active students.
Yeah, so one of our missions is to raise money for undocumented students, so we have to find different ways to raise this money. One of it was this run, so people were sponsored to run, and we raised probably about 3 scholarships that day.
It was great. And then also there they had the, I want to say Cuauhtémoc, Danza Azteca, and then they were doing like this very cultural ceremony where they got the bless you and everything. It was really nice to see them like performing that. I think this was the Adi conference that was at our school last year, so kind of pictures from that. And I think it also showed Stephanie, the Adi recipient of the scholarship, I think.
But a lot of this, we try to get all the students involved in this, to actually see different perspectives to learn, so that they can actually learn about, the organizations that are out there helping you, such as ARE and Unión del Barrio, and
oh no, it's not. It goes to another picture. That full music.
And this is like a march that we did. I think this is the one. Yeah, this is the Zapata March. We're hosting one this year again, but a lot of the students, got involved in this, and they got really motivated because of the action that we took against, the ICE raids, the cuts in education, the militarization of the schools, and a lot of students, like right there, they got involved in the escolta, and we just got motivated because there were speakers, there was entertainment.
And I think I did a caravan during the time of like when it was the educational cuts and stuff like that. So that's on the steps of the Capitol building. And there's not like photos here, but last year Jonathan, myself, and Alex and 2 other students, we got to go to Sacramento. And this right here, well, Xavier, he was speaking to the Hispanic Scholarship Fund and telling them, I think on behalf of ADE, like open up your scholarships to undocumented students, because you say you want Latinos in colleges and want a higher representation, but you know, you cut it out to this smaller group of students. And this is the last previous gathering?
Yeah, this is a previous gathering that we had, but this is another of the struggles that we constantly were with, trying to, you know, tell students that, you know, guns are not good in schools. You know, it contradicts everything that they tell us about education. And pretty much, like Sakina said, we won the fight, we won the struggle, but, you know, we're still on alert because there's just like there, you know, there's people with us, there's actually opposition. So we're still in the struggle. We're not. It hasn't ended.
Yeah. These are just more photos from the audio run. It was fun. And at the end of the year, like, you know, we do hard work during the school year, so we kind of, you know, meant to get all the words. We went to Magic Mountain, so, you know, it kind of pays off to do all this hard work and stuff. I think that was like
the May Day march.
Yeah. I think that's the end. Oh, and also, there was a protest held in opposition to the border, and I think that was another physical struggle because altogether, I think the protest was like 8.5 miles long. So we went there, and then it was like a silent march to speak for those who have died, who have lost their lives coming over here, crossing the border, and for those who don't speak up about it because they have fear that they might not be able to be with their families anymore. So we took the initiative to be silent during that march. And it was, I guess you could say it was pretty successful. There was a lot of people there, and a lot of people got knowledge about the situation that exists here in LA and San Diego and all along the borders that are placed to keep families apart and stuff. And
this is where the event that we hosted, where we hosted a victory. A lot of kids, you know, students think that, you know, when they can't do anything, they can't change anything in the government or in history and in the communities. But one of the things that we did here is we try to motivate kids to come help us out, to, you know, at least participate in this protest that we were hosting against school shooting ranges. And a lot of the students, you can see that they're motivated, they're yelling, they're you know, out there protesting. But we hosted it was a large event where we, you know, gave entertainment, we gave food out, but pretty much we came down to the struggle, which was, you know, getting those shooting ranges out of our school. And you know, we won it. We won the struggle, but we're still, as I said, we're still in alert because we have opposition.
I think that's about it.
Oh, and throughout this struggle, we didn't just, you know, do it as one school. We had many schools, Mission Bay. We had Memorial Middle School, who, you know, was there supporting us all the time. But a lot of this is, you know, we can. It shows us that we can organize not just in the school, but, you know, beyond.
So yeah, that pretty much was everything that we did beyond the classroom, taking what we learned at the Social Justice Center and putting it into action.
A lot of it, Metro was started at Lincoln High School when it opened recently, a year ago, and a lot of us know it's Movimiento Estudiantil Chicano de Aztlán, and it actually was a place where I actually felt at home, because I would usually just go home, eat, and then go to school. But coming to, you know, Metro, it actually, you know, kind of made me realize of the injustices that were going on in schools, and a lot of the students that were in Metro also saw that, so that's why they joined. But a lot of Metros, our Metro, you know, is distinct in, you know, from all the other schools, is because we do have a lot of the activism and organizing, and usually the students, like at our school, they stay from like probably from the 7:30 a.m. to all the way to probably like 8 o'clock p.m. And like I said, it's actually a place where we'll feel like home because, you know, we actually make connections and we are motivated, and we see, we like I said, we open our eyes to, you know, the injustices that are going on. And we actually try to motivate kids to step up and make change, because it's the community's responsibility, but it's also the students' responsibility to actually, you know, speak up when it comes to, you know, what's going on in their schools, what's happening, is there injustice going on, do they know their rights? And that's a lot of we bring in speakers to come speak to our organization, and to actually politicize the students and actually make them conscious of the injustices. And actually also it teaches us our history, because like I said, they teach us Eurocentric history, but they never teach us about, you know, where we came from, the Aztecas, the Mayas. They never teach us how good it feels to be Hispanic or raza or whatever you want to call it.
And ARSO, as you guys know, is the African Revolutionary Student Organization. And the intentions of making ARSO was to give representation to the African community and to the African students on the campus, because a lot of times there are different organizations. Well, I don't want to say organizations, but like different clubs on campus, like Black Student Unions and Black Student Alliance, African Student Union, stuff like that. But there wasn't one that actually took like a political stance and as to why the community is the way it is, as to why it is the majority of our people who are underrepresented in colleges, but are the most represented in the prison system. So through organizations like Metro and ARSO, we try to give like a political aspect as to why our lives are the way they are. And I started ARSO last year along with a lot of other students, and it was something that the school couldn't offer, probably even if they wanted to, because in some way, I think that the school can get it, but a lot of times it would be the trouble of finding a teacher who would actually want to do that. No, that's not an issue because you have ADA, But it just seems like it wasn't something that the school could give us, except for in the social justice programs. And another thing is that only the 9th grade Center for Social Justice is not available to me anymore. I'm a sophomore now. We can't be in there anymore. So ARSO gave us a space to organize, and it's through the Social Justice Center, and it also gives a space for the incoming 9th graders to be exposed to something outside of the colonial educational box, pretty much. And so through ARSO, it gave them a good space where you could think freely and also learn about yourself from a cultural, historical, political perspective, and everything else that'll help you benefit.
And the root of all this, as Sakina said, it was all through social justice and the teachers. Most of all, the teachers were the ones that were always constantly motivating us and constantly, asking questions, telling us to ask us questions about whatever, what's going on in our community, what's going on outside. And I came into school as a junior year, so I never took the course, and I never got, that enrichment of, what Sakina and other 9th graders got last year. But just seeing them that what they're learning is actually productive, it actually motivated me to actually want to learn more and wanted me to join the organizations and kind of be part of the Social Justice Center, because that's, as I said, that's the root of all of us and actually of the organizations that we started at this school.
Center, crazy.
Yeah, so going back to the course, right? So as you can see with the social justice course, we just kind of scratched the surface a little bit. We knew that the actual change was going to take place through organizing. And my job is a teacher, but my real job is that I'm a cuadro unión del barrio. School is just my job to pay the bills, okay? But my job is to awaken those that are asleep, and la compañera said, and organize those that are awake. So through the social justice course, it was very important for the students to see that unity and building with the allies in the community were doing the real work. There was no way that they were going to learn all this stuff in the classroom and not put it into practice. But like I mentioned before, the school is not conducive or open for that kind of action, right? We know that the school, it has a very strong relationship with the socio-economic capitalistic system of this country. And there's no way they're going to allow a course like this to challenge this kind of system. So we knew that our work had to go outside the classroom. So through ARE, I'm also a member of the Association of Raza Educators. We were able to model what we learned as organizers with the students through the Association of Raza Educators. So the students knew that we came from an organizing background. Okay? As I mentioned, Unión del Barrio, it's a political, militant, Mexicano, Raza Latinoamericano organization that's been around for over 28 years. So it was very important that all the knowledge that I learned from my organization to bring it to the students. And it's very funny because now I hear them self-criticizing each other. Oh, that's a self-criticism right there, So I can see them using the language, the way they run meetings, the way they dialogue. So it was very important to exemplify that through organization.
As you guys have seen in the pictures before, and if you guys read the pamphlet, then we work with the African People's Socialist Party. Well, we have a couple ties with them, also with the PDM. And it's so great that Chairman O'Malley is going to be here from the African People's Socialist Party. And also you saw from the photos before that Xavier and myself got to go to the Impedum conference. And there also is a branch of Impedum in San Diego. And so we have the ties with the different revolutionary organizations that are also on an international basis too.
Oh, so then you have Impedum, which is part of the social. Oh, you did that. So anyway, well, to be honest with you, my biggest thing is going back to this whole social justice class, and before they continue with that, is for a teacher like me, I come from a school where I taught juniors and seniors, so it's pretty plush little setup I had over there. And when this class opened up, it was ninth graders, and it was, in the neighborhood I live in, so inner city. And it was interesting because when I decided to leave that school I was at and go to this school, Lincoln, most of the people at the school I was at was like making jokes. It was like, oh my God, what are you doing? Are you crazy? So on and so forth. You should wear the bulletproof vest and so on and so forth. And it was pretty funny to me because that's kind of ironic that most of the teachers who get shot seem to be in the suburbs. At least most of the violence happens within, when kids in the inner city fight, they tend to keep it amongst the kids. They don't bring it to the teachers that often. But it's, and that's something that we do definitely bring up in our classes. How do suburban schools avoid that constant negative press? I mean, when something happens in our school, it's just like, oh, it's expected. But when stuff happens like that, it's a tragedy. It's like, oh, well, that's just never happened. And yet they still continue to get that same, positive outlook and so on and so forth. So we bring up issues that are real. And in this class is really important because how often do you feel like if you're in a classroom, there's that big elephant in the room. It's sitting there, but no one wants to talk about it, like racism. Is this system built on racism? And we discuss that. We confront that. Black and brown tension. We've discussed that. It has to be brought up. You can't keep ignoring those issues. So in our class, we have those opportunities to discuss that, to hope, have a way to, dialogue about it instead of just always arguing and fighting about it. And sometimes it works, and, obviously at ninth grade, sometimes it doesn't. You never know with those guys. But it was a big step for me to come to this school because I thought that it was so important, because sometimes I sat in my little bungalow in my other school, and I felt like I was alone, like, oh my God, I just can't take this. Like I said, the system wears on everybody, not just the students. And I always felt like I was alone, and then finally I got this class, and now I'm seeing all these teachers and professionals that think just like me. It's beautiful. It's like, and I'm just, it surprised me because I didn't know there were that many people out there who thought just like me. And so now taking this class is not only, helping the students, it's helping me as a teacher. I'm like, I finally have the freedom to teach about things that I think are really pertinent to our students. And it's really unique to have this class, and I think it's really important to have it in our neighborhoods, only because our neighborhoods they have their unique situations. You can't run a model like in our neighborhood. We have La Jolla, which is the rich, neighborhood, or the rich community. And in that community, I know that those kids don't have the same issues, same problems that our kids have. So for us to run a model, copying them and saying, well, it works over here for those type of students, it should work for you too, and keep counting our students with that makes absolutely no sense. When you have 45% to 50% of our students across the country failing under that model that works for the wealthy class of people, it obviously doesn't work. But yet we keep doing it. And so it makes absolutely no sense to me to keep repeating this problem that's not working. If you were out of business and you were losing 50% of your money every year, would you keep that same model? Obviously not. So when it comes to education, we should think that same way. If we're going to keep pounding our heads the wrong way, we're going to keep getting the same results. And actually it's getting worse, as we progress here. I mean, you can talk about the pipeline prison to prison aspect, where almost 47–50% are made up of blacks, Africans in jail, and then you got the other high percentage of Latinos in jail, and then you got the small minority of whites in jail, and then like she said about college, but they run the college system. So all these things we are allowed to talk about finally in the classroom. Now, here's the catch. How long will they let this class go on? We just started this our second year, and we already know we're walking on eggshells. There's those people, those oppressive people out in the community that have already talked about this class in a negative light, and we're hoping that if we get, like I said, I call them, we created some little monsters. We go out there and get these guys. So we're hoping if we get enough minds together, like these kids that we have here, if anybody does try to touch our program, you don't know the result. Our kids will go out and they won't sit idly by while people get kicked out or jobs or programs get ended. So we're hoping that with this, the kids can take that power, that they feel now and move it to the next level. I can't wait till these guys get older, like 10th grade, a senior, just now a senior, and hasn't even fully got the full class, and he's already on another level. Well, I can't wait till they get older. And one reason I do this is because I have a student, and it was interesting, my first year of teaching, he was a senior, and I had an econ class, and that was my only way to diverge from the standards, because seniors, they don't tend to care too much about seniors. They're like the stepchildren. It's like, they don't test, who cares, just teach them. And so it was kind of cool because in my econ class, I was able to bring in globalization, sweatshops, all these oppressive systems out there. And one of my students is now an aide in my class, and he's graduating from UCSD, and he's a senior there, and he took this initiative to like come find me again and say, I heard about your program, I want to be in it. I mean, he's like, your class taught me this. He's all right after high school, a couple years out, I went to India, lived in the villages with the people, so on and so forth, immersed himself in this, and now he's going his sociology major, and now he's doing research projects based on our class specifically, and the effect it's having on our students. So that little seed I planted finally comes back to, and I get to see the results, and that's what we're hoping. We're planting a whole bunch of seeds, and some you see the results right away, and then some we're hoping will grow, and by the time they're 18 or whatever, they might start understanding why we did what we did. And ideally, we'd love to have where these kids can have this type of information from freshman to senior, because then you can create some much more potent activists out there. But once again, it's all about empowering the students, and the idea of social justice for me is equity for all people. I mean, equitable distribution of all resources to all people, and that's a word that we get into, where equity and equality, and what's the difference? Like I said, if you go to the rich neighborhood over here, you might give them the exact same thing you give us, but do we need something different? And it's equal, but is it equitable? And that's what we try to emphasize in our class. You guys, we need to understand the difference, because if you have something, if you need a little bit more and it'd be beneficial for you and they don't need as much, why should they get the same? And you guys have to understand, and we try to get the kids to understand that kind of stuff. So this class to me has like been I feel so much better now teaching now. Students, they still get you have those days where it's like, oh my God, why am I here? But overall, because of the class and because of the subject I get to teach, I feel re-energized. I will be honest with you. I was burnt out after my 6th, 7th year, and I was like, man, this is killing me. But now that I'm in this class and be able to see the progress and get to talk about things I feel are really important to our people, I feel totally re-energized. And then when I have people like you come in to come into these conferences, we go to the one in San Francisco and all that, it's a beautiful thing. And so the class to me is really important, and I think that I'm hoping, this is the last thing, I'm hoping that when you guys go back to your communities, you will join either ADE or some other group that if you don't have an avenue, join one of those groups to maybe start your own thing and make your own movement. Sorry, I was running my mouth. As my students tell me all the time, I talk too much. I know.
It's okay, man. So now when that happens.
Yeah, I'm trying to kill time.
A lot of the organizations, such as this one, like ADE and SDSU Metro, they're part of, and AFSC, they're part of the Rasta Rice Coalition, and a lot of, they have a newspaper too, that they always bring out, I think, like every 3 months. And and a lot of the Rasta Rice Coalition, they talk about, rights for the Rasta and the community, and I think they do the human rights training.
Yeah. So, and I just to piggyback on what Thurman was saying here. So we knew that the kids coming into our classroom had 9 years of a colonized education. So it was a big challenge to have them understand and to really care and to decolonize themselves. Okay, we knew that it was a challenge, but we knew we couldn't do it alone. So it was very important for us, like I said, and I just want to mention it again, is to show them there are organizations out there. And the San Diego State Mecha was a key, because the students, you should tell them, we want you to go to college, right? We want you to succeed, and that's how we frame success, right? For you to go to college, get your education, and leave the neighborhood, right? But we had to change that, and succeed for us was for them to do get an education, right, versus schooling, to go to college, but do come back into the community and be able to be a productive, what we call citizen of our community. So through Mecha, we show them the example that were students that were involved in organizations while they were getting their school. And now I know the San Diego State Mecha has started an after-school program, volunteer every day, from about 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock at night, when they're able to move that social justice course and be able to take it to another level. The human rights workshop, right? We knew that the school talks a good game, right? They want parent engagement, right? They want parents to be involved in their education. But we know that they're not very open to parents, they're not culturally aware of how the school system works. So one of the spaces that we created for the parents was the human rights workshop. Because a lot of the students were getting all this social justice education, getting pumped up, and coming back to home, to their houses, but then they had the confrontation with the parents, well, no, you gotta get an education, get a college. Well, what are you talking about, this social justice course? This is nonsense, right? So we knew that we had to raise the conscience for parents as well. So what's happening with the human rights workshop is we do this, we do it about 4 times a year. This is barely our second workshop, when we get parents from the community, they go to a training on how to become human rights observers. We do teach them a little bit of our Constitution, a little bit of social justice, the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, and at the end they get training on how to observe, identify, document the violations that are going on in our neighborhood. And one of the biggest violations in the neighborhood is not only police brutality, but it's border patrol ICE raids. So then you see the parents getting this knowledge and becoming conscious along with the students, and that was definitely a beautiful thing. And what else do we have there? Memorial Mecha, that's the junior high school, you see the Mecha and AFS.
And the Education Not Arms Coalition, which was one of the biggest, how could I say, one of the biggest coalitions that Lincoln Metro was part of, and ARSO as well. And it was a struggle against gun ranges, and it was made up of different outside organizations such as Mission Bay Mecha, and also San Diego State, ADE, and ARSO and Lincoln Mecha. And pretty much it was providing information to the community, and getting them to know that there's gun ranges in our schools, and that it contradicts everything about education. And like you can see, we did a lot. It was a 1-year struggle that when it was a year ago that the Education Not Arms Coalition was created, and pretty much when it was created, we started out small, but as we got bigger, a lot of people started joining, and a lot of people started joining the struggle against getting those gun ranges out of school. Yeah, it's very important to mention what we're passing around. It just happens that an article came out today highlighting that struggle of the students for the No Arms Coalition. And it's very important to mention is that San Diego is a military town. Okay, so JRTC, rifle training, it's a common practice in the high schools. So for these students to be able to, to break this down and be able to take those rifle ranges away from the school was a big victory. But it would have never happened if it wasn't for the students. I know that one of the teachers that was involved didn't want to even have his name in any of the literature. He didn't want to speak out because he was scared for his job. So, in a sense, first we're kind of proactive. We were kind of careful. We don't want them taking advantage of the students just to use them as the umbrella for their struggle. And then when the students took over the struggle, you can see the big difference, and the teachers were behind the scenes. We were just, being able to do what we can do as teachers, but pretty much it was a student movement, and they were able to gain that little victory, right? But we know that, it's just it's a small victory, and we know that they were facing a powerful structure, which is the school board, and they can come up with any kind of amendment and be able to shut that down. So now we're working on that. We want the students to know that although this is a victory, to be prepared for what comes next.
Okay, can I say something on that real quick? I'll be quick. I'll try to be quick. But I have to set it up because this was like the epitome of this whole teaching thing. I mean, this was like everything culminating came to this, because now the thing that was amazing to me is they did it themselves. I just went and watched. It was like entertaining. It was like, man, look at these guys. And I didn't have to do anything. And the kids ran it. And this is like 9th graders, 10th graders. It was like youngsters too. A lot of them were just 9th graders. And there was a whole thing, and even 10th graders. And then, what was that?
Some of them were from middle school too.
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing to me. And I'm just watching. I'm just like, oh my God. It was kind of tearful for me, because it's like your kids finally growing up and right before your eyes. And so, but I gotta set the scenario because how many 9th, 10th graders would you imagine? I mean, because I barely made it through that night. Would you imagine would sit there at the board for 6 hours? I said, what time are we leaving? 3, and it didn't even start talking till 5. And then the thing, our agenda, they kicked it to the end, and we didn't get spoke about till 9. And I was like, oh my God! But our kids, these guys right here, I mean, they was out there with yelling stuff, marching and protesting.
There were
the whole
many
time.
meetings. That wasn't just the.
Oh yeah, well no, this is the one for the final vote, and that I was at, and it was just like watching. It was just amazing to me that these kids had that kind of energy, and how many of those other 9th graders and 10th graders are at home on MySpace doing nothing, while these kids are out there sacrificing their time and being tired and everything else. And they did it, and that's what it was all about to me. That's why it was that was like the highlight of my teaching career, up to this point. But then Zakina speaking today was another big highlight. That was really good. But so that was real. I'm real passionate about this. That's why I talk so much about it, because this is an amazing opportunity for me, and I'm going to run with it as long as they'll let us. But I don't think they expected us 3 to get together and think the way we think. I think a social justice is a great concept, but yeah, you guys just keep it quiet. But running these 2 guys, I've been blessed. I got lucky. These guys are really, really active and get the kids, thinking about activism in a big way. But that night was amazing to me because 6 hours, 6.5 hours just standing out in the cold. It was cold too. And these guys doing their thing was, and that's why I like doing what we do, because of that.
I want to add something. When we were there, I don't know if Mr. Ochoa this is okay, but afterwards, a guy came up to Mr. Ochoa and was all like, do you know, okay, he was like, you know that the U.S. is like in a depression right now or something. And he was like, yeah, an economic crisis, whatever you want to call it. And the guy said, the only way that we have ever came out of a depression is through war. It's through war, getting funds and defeating some other countries so that you can benefit your own way, and your own economy pretty much. And the guy was all like, we need to train these students to become soldiers because we have to fight a war to get out of this depression, as if we're some sort of object that will just save America. And it's like, no, we're students. We need our education. We don't need to be trained to become soldiers because these idiotic bankers or whatever got themselves into some sort of depression and they expect us to get them out of it? No, we're students. We're going to school and we're going to college. Like, you
Mr. Kiki Ochoa, who's also been
I hope I'm not repeating something that somebody said because I haven't been here, but one thing that really affected me that night and affected some of the youth that are here was the Young Republicans came out full force that night, you know what I'm saying? And you didn't talk, did you know? No. The Young Republicans came out full force, the NRA came out full force, to try to prevent the work that the students have struggled for over a year and a half, because they had gone to a bunch of meetings, one of which ended till almost 11 o'clock at night. So we were already trained for that 6-hour session. But what was crazy is my students come up to me and go, hey, Mr. Ochoa, check this out. So I walk in and there's a group of these Young Republicans and NRA with this poster, right? Because they're trying to agitate. They want the kids, their feathers to be ruffled, to get upset, to lose that discipline so they can undermine the whole work that they've achieved for over a year and a half. And the sign says, 4 out of 5 of these kids are going to drop out of school, with an arrow pointing to my students. Those are the kind of people that my youth are constantly working against. You know what I'm saying? People who look at them as people who are only going to answer when they go up to the drive-thru at Jack in the Box, can I help you? That's what they envision. They don't want our youth. A lot of them do not want our youth to do anything but serve and defend a country or defend a flag that doesn't even consider them human beings, or gives them the right to an education that they deserve. So to me, honestly, I'm honored to work with my youth, because what they did that night, 6 hours of discipline working, and again, but what was real funny was the next day, they looked like me, all tired, and like, and I was like, exactly, now you know how it feels.
And tell us about the last one, the last one.
the last meeting when they tried to, okay, at the last meeting, which was on February 20th, I believe, what they tried to do, well, it's pretty ironic, I hope I didn't mention this already, but the woman who represents Lincoln High School in our district is the one who voted against us on the first meeting, because it was a 3-against-2 vote. So the first one, she voted against us to keep the gun ranges going. And then we waited a year and a half just to get our item of the banning the weapons training put onto the agenda at the school board meeting for a year and a half. But in 2 weeks, they're already challenging the resolution to say that to have the gun ranges ended at the end of the school year because they want students to be able to finish their competitions and they already reserved flights and paid for whatever financial things or whatever. But it's all like, why do we have to wait a year and a half and you can do it in 2 weeks? Like that was like a slap in the face. It's like, do you even really care about what we're doing? Like
Pretty much it was a big struggle because as students, they expect us, just to sit down, go to class, and that's it, or go home, eat, and all. But what happened was that was one of the biggest events that I kind of took leadership on because we had to do it. It was a 1 year struggle that you just couldn't quit. You had your ups and downs, but you just couldn't quit because there was people counting on you, and there was other organizations that were just telling you, come on, we have to do this. Let's do this. So it kind of motivates the student. And pretty much what I'm trying to get to is that just like Sakina said, a lot of the opposition that we had, it's terrible because we don't see it. We see it every day, and just in that event that we're taking action, and we see that opposition still there, and and we're taking that action. We're taking that initiative that teachers and the community members always want. That they want the students to speak out. They want them to speak out on this and organize. But we see that opposition, and it tears students down sometimes. It tears them down, and it gets them and pretty much it gets me motivated. It gets me mad. The anger that I have, it gets me motivated to actually take more action and do more of these events.
it allows us to turn our feelings of like sadness and like, oh, I can't do this. And so when you start getting angry, that's the good part because that's when you go out and protest and you don't feel like you have nothing to lose pretty much because a lot of things have already been taken from you. It's like, what do you have to lose if you go and protest and get these guns taken out?
Just like Thurman said, it turns us into monsters.
Yeah.
And here's another thing about that whole board thing is there's one guy on there named Beck that crushed or just sent out a letter that or email basically just talking mess about our whole school, how bad it was, and they're basically a disgrace and so on.
On that news story, they said that they were talking about the entire San Diego Unified School District, but they only talked about Lincoln High School.
Right.
It's like there's like 15 different schools.
And they came to the Africans teacher room to
Yeah,
pay for
she's
this.
like the best teacher, and then they were talking about, well, the teachers aren't good enough, and the test scores are bad. But there's this lady named Miss Jackson, and they have this section in our community where there's like these murals, and she's painted on there because she's been around for a long time, and they actually had the audacity to put her on TV while talking about bad test scores.
Right.
It's like, what?
So, but the thing that surprised me was now you're going to go and you think this guy just talked so bad about your school and you're going to have to get his vote, to win. And every time they've gone in there, he's been nothing but like amazed by how good our students behaved, how well they spoke, so on and so forth. And these guys are representative of our school, and they're represented in the right way, showing him they're not all like that, and you can't label our whole school like that when you have speakers like Zakina and then the X and then other people just who go out there and speak. So that really caught me off guard that he was always complimenting and saying how impressed he was by the students and their ability, to motivate or their activism and so on and so forth.
You know what? Did you talk about the clapping?
No.
Okay. Well, because at the board meeting February 10th, we had about 250, 300 people there. And when the students were talking about against the weapons training, the first speaker came up, everybody's clapping. And Sheila Jackson, who is one of the board members, former military person herself, against all the work that the students have done.
African American.
Who promised them to support them regardless of the decision that was going to come down. Said no clapping, you wave your hands. So throughout the whole meeting, nobody clapped. They just did like this little symbol support. But when we go 2 weeks later, because it's going to be flipped, right? And she's the one that supported the trying to mess with the work that the kids did. When the JROTC students came out, or the people for the gun range came out, clapping, and we're like, whoa, what's going on? She doesn't even realize the contradiction that's so obvious to the people, in the audience. And they're clapping, and we notice it. So as soon as our speakers go on, we're like, boom, boom, boom. And she goes, stop clapping, you can't clap, only hands. And she doesn't even realize subconsciously her bias. You know what I'm saying? So then we're like, well, I'm sorry, señorita, we're going to clap. So we clapped, and we ended up
so they always try. So I think that's been the biggest thing I've seen so far this year. That because when I did tests, it wasn't really productive. Like they didn't really understand the word. They could, so I think using it in the class for me has been the best
And I can
experience.
tell you, it's an increase in your vocab, really. I mean, it beats going to a dictionary and looking up a word, and you can just like learn it in social justice. Because they have like a, I don't know, word weaponry or word wall,
Yeah.
and it has like all these different words and stuff. And I bet you wouldn't learn that in a regular classroom. But I hope that's not the test where you have to remember all them. You wouldn't have to. I mean, but it really does expand your
Yeah, to
vocabulary.
answer your question real quick, and let's just open it to be a dialogue now.
Yeah.
Please
I think
ask
we're probably
questions.
boring you to death.
To deal with those confrontations, the students know that they are under a hierarchical system, and they know that the teacher will have more power. What we do is through the student organization. If they have a problem, they need to organize. Organization is the answer. They can't go alone and fight this teacher because they're going to lose. So what they do is they bring the problem to Mecha, they bring the problem to Arso, and that teachers know not to mess with Mecha or Arso, because they either will be in the paper or they will be blasted.
Protesting in front of
Yeah, so that's one way that we deal with that confrontation. Let ask the question, then Ms. Ochoa.
Actually, I just needed clarification to her question, so you just answered it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
What's that?
Regarding human rights of being you have two human rights observers right there, and they both went to the human rights trainings. And I don't know if you shared about when you actually
We don't have
caught the
that video?
Border Patrol harassing,
No.
and they were on, they was on the news, all over the place, because they actually did a videotape and caught the Border Patrol harassing somebody at a bus stop, and it was on the news all over SD. I don't know if you have that footage.
It was actually a case of racial profiling. Well, of course, it's like harassing your people in the community, but the news, because at first we thought we were just, like, dang, this ain't right. So we had a camera, it was on my birthday. We had just came back from an X-Clan concert, and it was, it was fun. And so we were just, we were actually riding the trolley, and Alex, he was like, oh my gosh, there's a Border Patrol agent, like, at the trolley stop across the street from Puerto Rico. And so we were like, what? Like, we didn't see anything, so we run, and there it is. And we're, like, recording it, and I get on the phone, I call Benjamin Bravo, and they send, like, somebody over there. And then the next thing you know, it's like on the news as a racial profiling case. So just kind of the small things you learn, like, it helps because we honestly weren't expecting that. Like, we were having a good day, but then that's like when the action has to come out. That's when you really have to use the knowledge of what you learned in the social justice classes and then the human rights training. You actually have to put it into action. And that was crazy. Like, and after that, a protest took place right there on the exact corner where it happened.
Yeah, and it actually, it kind of offended, the way that the outcome of it, it was great because they organized a protest after this, but pretty much, it was Sakina's birthday, and we were out in X-Clan, and
It was Martin Luther
random.
King.
It was Martin Luther King's birthday.
Freedom Day,
holiday.
that's not freedom.
And we just saw that we saw it, that it was a Homeland Security, and we know what Homeland Security does. They go against, those who commit crimes, supposedly, illegal aliens. And but we saw that guy. He was, in the bus stop. He was sitting to go to home, work, wherever he was going. He was going somewhere, but just the fact that Homeland Security came and asked him questions. What's your papers? This, it tells us that ICE, isn't coming into our community to protect it or isn't protecting the country. It's coming in and, destroying the family that, that guy was probably going to. And pretty much, it was a random thing that we did, and I had a camera. I actually stole it from my sister for that day, for X-Clan. And it helped out, and we had a bunch of quarters, and we called, and then at the end of it, we had, the skills because of, human rights training, and, we called some other human rights observers, and they came and documented everything. We took numbers, we took the license plates of the agent, and agent's car, and then after that, we felt good about it, and, later on we saw that they organized Esquina de Resistencia, we'll protest, and we went to eat tacos.
After a good day of work.
Yeah. But it just really shows you how important it is to educate your community, because I bet you if that guy knew his human rights, he wouldn't have let those guys talk to him. It's like, you don't have the right to come up to me and ask me because I'm Mexican sitting on this bus stop, my citizenship status or whatever people call it. So that just kind of shows you how important it is to really educate your community.
just want to share something real quick. I was talking, well, I'm from Highland Park, I'm from Metro PCC. I was walking down the street the other day, and the sheriff's been brutal out there. They've been really oppressing us, and helicopters, rounds, and all that stuff. And I came with the realization that this is low intensity warfare. And the community of color is constantly, exposed to low intensity warfare. The same stuff that it goes on in other countries, the U.S. oppresses other countries, they do it here. They do it here. And so that's another term that I was like, oh.
Well, that's a good point you bring up. In my class, we watched this YouTube clip. If anybody goes online and does a COINTELPRO YouTube clip, and this guy does this real short, and it motivated me to get my students to do iMovies of their own, little short ones. But this was like an 8-minute clip, but it goes through the Black Panther Party and just how all the black leaders got killed in the 60s just by COINTELPRO and all that stuff. But the final ending is he starts saying, well, they do things to scare us. Oh wait, they terrorize us. Oh, terrorism. And so that's basically, they're the biggest terrorists in the world. And yet they go over there and they talk so much about other countries. So if you ever, that's a great little 8-minute clip, man. It's really good. But yeah, go ahead.
Thanks so much. I'm Raul. I'm a teacher here at Washington Prep High School here in Los Angeles, and this is very wonderful that you guys are presenting this. And what I've been a teacher for 20 years. What I struggle with is not only a colonial education, but a capitalist education. And I'm wondering, how do you guys deal with that concept of of a capitalist education within a system of capitalist oppression that we suffer? And so what that means is that right now the young people, this is the I generation, the iPhone, the iPod, the iMac, you call it the iMac, whatever, right? And so this generation, which is, I like to call it the I generation, it's going to transform itself to a we generation, because you guys who are 17, 16 years old or whatever will live revolutionary times in this country. I promise you that. And I hope when I'm old, you're going to tell me which way to point my rifle. And I will point my rifle. And so I'm wondering, is like, how do you guys deal with that question of anti-capitalist education? I mean, as Karl Marx said, it's not just to understand the world, but to change it. To make revolution, and for the working class to run society and that sort of thing. And so, on that note, I mean, how do you guys address that type of situation?
I think one of the things, like addressing capitalism, is I think you have to know what it is and know how it works for you. So Mr. Thurman can explain that game about where you go.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Shut
Well,
down
I
the
do.
country,
You guys probably, a lot of you probably, since you're into the social justice aspect, the Rethinking series, and they have this one book called Rethinking Globalization. And if you get that, that basically is like a whole lesson plan of just great activities. I mean, they got, but anyways, long story short is I go through the idea of globalization and how these corporations, I mean, I explain to them what a corporation is, how it is evolved. I show videos on sweatshops, so on and so forth, just to get them to understand everything you're wearing is probably made by a child. And they even show like Oshkosh being made by kids. Wait, that's kind of ironic, isn't it? So I get into that that's a big, that's close to my heart. I mean, that's my thing. And I think capitalism is a major, I mean, one of the big, if not the biggest, and we have that debate all the time. Is race really the main thing now, or is it this capitalistic system that's way more important? Because they'll oppress a white person if they can make money off them as quick as they'll oppress any other race. And so I think that is huge, and I do a whole globalization piece, and there's one thing called, we play a game, and it's called Race to the Bottom, because all these third world countries or these underdeveloped countries are being forced to race to the bottom instead of racing to the top. And the game is, each group has to become a country. And they have like all these credits. You get credits for your wages. So obviously, the higher your wages are, then that means you're going to get less less points because you're trying to take care of your people. But if you go all the way on the corporate side, you get more points. And so they have to struggle. And as they battle each other, they test they know the waters. They say, okay, here's my final score. Here's my final score. And as they battle after about 5 series, they start having to be meaner and meaner to their people. And to the point to just attract this capitalistic, these corporations. And I got a personal example of one of my students' mother. She worked, and that's the funny part. They think all these sweatshops and stuff in third world countries. These sweatshops are right here in Garment District, right there in San Diego. And one of them was sewing labels. And and she broke it down. She was giving me some information. I was like, wow. It's like they take labels off of generic clothing and then stitch on a made in USA name brand tag. And she was getting paid 3 cents a label. And you get quotas, and if you didn't finish your quota, you have to stay till you finish. So 3 cents a label. Now, what happened was she lost her job. Why would you lose your job? Because they started bringing people from Tijuana who would take it for 2 cents a label. How dirty is that? I mean, that's what you call race to the bottom, for sure. And so I get into that in depth, and I struggle too because a lot of the Latino kids, because it's so close, near and dear, it should be near and dear to their heart because it's happening right here over the border in droves, you know. And some of them just don't, they're so beat up in this system, they don't even get to that. Well, it's not me, you know. And then you go into the Asian culture here in the garment district where people are, you know, the slave trade basically, bringing undocumented Asians over here and working these sweatshops, you know. And so I get into that in depth, and that is a major thing to me. I agree. And the idea of buy, consume, that whole thing.
You want to answer some of that question?
Yeah, you know, I'm a member of ARE, Association of Us Educators, but I'm also a member of Unión del Barrio. And as Unión del Barrio, we know that the problem is imperialism, colonialism, and especially capitalism, which is used as a tool to pit, you know, our people against each other. And in order for capitalism to exist, you have to have winners and losers. That's what people have to understand. Capitalism, you have to have those that win and those that lose. You can't have the rich without having the poor. You can't have somebody having a big mansion without one of my students' parents cleaning that mansion. You can't have, you know, a $300,000 car without people being exploited all around the world to make that car. And we have to understand that capitalism is it is the problem. Because if we don't understand that, and if all we want to do is become capitalists, because they teach us that, look, some of us that make it, oh look, that's an example that you can do it. You know what I'm saying? This myth of a meritocracy where yeah, you know what, some of us, oh, you work hard, you work real hard, and you're going to achieve the American dream. Well, my mom worked real hard her whole life. And she's still working hard her whole life. And my kids' parents are working hard, and they haven't achieved this so-called American dream. So that in itself is a lie. So people have to understand that, man.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things about globalization, it really brings into perspective what's happening in poorer countries, but it's happening here, you know, and especially with this recession, 650,000 jobs lost in January, you know. The big three, they're gonna start laying off a lot of people, and this is, you know, we're starting to see capitalism actually show exactly what you're saying. You know, a lot of people are beginning to talk about, hey, I've been working my entire life, and I have absolutely nothing to show for it. Meanwhile, they're giving $800 billion to the banks, you know? And more, actually. Obama actually put in $750 billion more in his budget after the stimulus package. And I think, you know, that's a big thing because it's going to start hitting homes. There's going to be there's going to be a budget crisis here in California, you know? They're going to start cutting social services. Tuition's going to go up. They're already, you know, cutting back on classes that I think, you know, it is showing, you know, it doesn't have to be in a third world country. It's happening here, and it's happening to us, and it's happening to everybody, regardless of what color your skin is, you know?
I agree, but one thing real quick is here's the beauty of the system. Is they got it where you basically have all of us in a noose. And every time we say let's tax the rich, they'll say, oh, we'll lay off some more people. Look what you made us do. And they tighten it up some more, cinch it up some more. And that's the sad part. When you talk about shooting a gun, I mean, unfortunately, every revolution in this whole world since the beginning of time has been violent. And it sucks to say that, but that's just, I mean, they're not going to give it back to us. Here we go, okay, we feel bad now. And so, it's a struggle, and you're right, yeah, this system is falling apart. And if you read the paper today, California's recession, or depression, is going to be worse than the nation's. I was like, wow, we're already at 10% unemployment. I mean, basically, it's done, it's happening, we're going to have a depression.
Yeah, it's kind of changing the topic a little bit, but I grew up in the Central Valley, small town, farmeros, orange pickers, grape pickers, you name it. Didn't get my social justice class until I went to the university and took a Chicano studies class and ended up majoring in that. But my question was, maybe you covered this in the beginning, how'd you get the social justice class started down there in San Diego? And what's the dynamic?
By luck. I think we got it by luck, and I think it was due to, we had a somewhat progressive superintendent that took over San Diego for a while. They came from Long Beach, they got from Freedom Riders. So I guess they had a course like that in social justice, so he brought up his people over, and they just contacted like the brightest and the most progressive, and they got Mr. Ochoa, of course, who recruited me, and then,
I know, that was the only one who had to go.
yeah,
to
he made me
interview.
leave a job of 12 years, and when I, I became a brand new teacher in the district, that's when the budget cuts hit, so I was out of the job. So it was hilarious. No, but so having that, there's this principal who used to teach this course here at Long Beach, in some high school here in Long Beach, social justice, thought it would be the progressive thing to do, and we kind of ran on that, but we kind of flipped it on her, and now it's out of her control, because we're actually trying to really do the social justice to action. So how do we deal as educators with that capitalistic system? It's conciencia, organización, and acción, which is conscience, organization, and action. And that's how we try to do it. And we know the price is going to take for us to break down the school system and rebuild it again for us.
Yep.
Go ahead.
My name is Jesus Moreno. I teach in Northern California. I'm actually here because I came to Long Beach to the California Association of Bilingual Educators conference.
Oh, CABE.
And CABE. So I'm here. I came to Southern California for the CABE conference, and a friend of mine who was a professor at CSUN told me about this one. So I snuck out of that one. So my district paid for me to come here, actually. So I snuck out of that one to come to this one, and I'm advisor to probably the largest MedChat chapter in Northern California. 3 months ago, we had 60 students showing up twice a week before school, an hour before school to meet. They stay an hour after school they offer free peer tutoring, and then on Fridays the officers meet, and they keep me there until like 8 o'clock on Friday after nights, which is gacho, but that's what they do to me. And nowadays, I'm seeing half of the students show up, which is still a huge chapter, I think, 30 students for a high school. Thank you very, very much for giving me the flame to light under their nalgas so they can get it. Thank you. 20 years. Thank you. On the way over here, I was texting one of the machistas, and I got really emotional because I started seeing the community, and then I was coming here, and I was like, I'm so glad that I snuck out of there. You have no idea. There's hundreds. I saw that the obstacles to our liberation, teachers. A lot of those teachers come from our neighborhoods.
Yep.
A lot of the teachers come from our neighborhoods, and I couldn't believe that. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of teachers pointing at my shirt yesterday and laughing.
Where's your shirt?
Right? Well, I had another Chicano shirt, but it says Chicano, and they were pointing at like they were at the zoo, and incredible to me. There's a few booths, in the sales, where they're selling stuff. And teachers are pointing in such awe at shirts, political shirts. And I'm like, wait, I don't get this. Nobody talks to each other. And these are teachers from our neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing it. Thank you for doing it. Reminding the students, not only is the education important, knowing what to do with it is even more so. So,
you're not alone.
thank you.
That's the biggest thing.
And so I came, and I felt alone for 2 days, and now I don't, so thank you.
Don't feel bad, because a few years when 227 was around, we went to CABE as ARE with some literature against 227. We got kicked out of CABE.
Doesn't surprise me.
So I'm glad that you're here.
And I want to introduce you to your long-lost twin, because I think you look just like Juan Orozco, man.
Okay, you have your hand up?
That
was him.
So, no, I thought it was interesting, the discussion that was just taking place about the capitalist economy, the layoffs in California and San Francisco. I'm a teacher in Oakland. I've been organizing for a long time. San Francisco is having 350 teachers laid off. Richmond was supposed to have 500? Richmond's supposed to have a bunch of school closures, 3 or 4. And so it's interesting because all the people I've talked to, everybody feels like they're on a little island, right? And they're oppressed and there's nothing they can do about it. But once we start looking at this whole California phenomenon, you know, it's so across the board. We look back at the 68 blowouts here in LA, or what was going on in other places, right? You know, there was a very serious racial character, and now this class character is coming out in full bloom because the economy doesn't give, you know, doesn't care. It's blowing everyone across the board. Janitors are getting laid off. There's wage cuts. The whole character of education is declining. So what I think would be really interesting of a meeting like this is, how do we take the next step and start organizing teachers statewide, students statewide, and even looking beyond that, what about the workers at our schools, the janitors, the electricians? I got a really good friend who's an ex-Black Panther electrician in the Oakland schools. Hella political. This guy's super political, always agitating the janitors. You know what I mean? But he's on a little island too. You know what I mean? He doesn't have the support that he needs, and the unions don't do anything. You know what I mean? So it's really just based on us. So I don't have an exact blueprint, but I'm just saying what would be the most important thing that we could see come out of this meeting is, how do we connect? How do we continue this? How do we develop a statewide struggle against the vicious political economy that doesn't have our interests at all and is just only in interest of the rich and the banks and war and so on? How do we tie all these issues together and make the next step? Because otherwise it's just more localized conferences, talking. We don't take that real militant action that we need to.
Are you familiar with the man named Jeff Duncan on Drive?
Yeah.
He helped us.
Well, he's one of the students, Jeff, right?
Can you repeat that name, please?
It's tight.
Excuse me, can you repeat that name, please?
Jeff Duncan on Drive.
Okay, go ahead, you have a question?
I'm sorry.
No, I have some thoughts on that. I wanted to say how inspired I am by what you did against the militarism in your schools, because another connection with the economy is that all the branches of the military are way up above their targets right now in getting kids. Why? Because there's no jobs.
Right.
And so we have to go after that right now. I just wanted to raise another point for organizing right now. I'm sure people have read or saw Obama's speech, and his education agenda, really what he said was incentive pay for teachers and charter schools. And if you look into it, to LA, to our school district, attached to the bailout money we're getting, is your school gets money if you agree to incentive pay for your teachers. What does that mean? Pay bonuses based on student test scores. This is going to be huge for us, and that, you know, that's going to punish the poor and schools and students of color. It's going to make nobody want to teach at those schools, and it's going to make teachers increasingly teach to the test. Because fuck, you know, our bonus, our bailout money depends on our test scores. This is already happening. I think that's something we need to organize around. We started a small amount in our teachers union in LA, and I just wanted to say we got to go to these teachers and argue with them and convince them how their interests are really in common with their students. For example, standardized testing. I mean, teachers are being bombarded with paperwork and all this shit, and then that's bad for their students. They're not getting a real education. So in LA, we managed to push our union to boycott periodic assessments, and we hope to take that further. And then on the level of a California-type strategy, another thing we are pushing our union to do, that there's a lot of momentum around, is at least one-day strike against the attacks. And we are pushing for that to be May 1st, so that it's in collaboration with the immigrant rights movement. And we're going to go to CTA locals, we're going to go to SEIU locals, where the union leadership isn't all that much on board, but we think, you know, we can get them on board. What if it could be a statewide type of a strike, you know? So I think we have a response. We got to go fight with these teachers, get the teachers' unions on board, because there's a lot of power there, and I think teachers do have a common interest with their students.
Yeah, I'm also a member of Unión del Barrio. Pablo Aceves from San Diego, and I just wanted to mention when the compañero was talking about standardized testing and everything that's going on in privatizing education. That's something that they've been doing for many years here, but it's also something that in other parts of Latino America, and I think parts of the world, they've started doing it. I know that one of the initiatives that they've been doing in Mexico right now with Calderón, who, in case anybody wondered, wasn't really elected, he was put in power. But what he's been doing is they've been talking about vouchers, they've been talking about privatizing education because it's not efficient, they've been doing other things, and so it's at the same time there's low intensity war here and other places, there's all these other things too, because one of the things they want to make sure that especially our people don't do is think. You know, and if you look at the way testing and things are structured, if you look at even the small school model, people are being charted into trades, people being charted into you know, things like that, tracked, so that they'll either be in the military or they'll work for the system, and they'll work for places like La Jolla. We always make the reference from San Diego to La Jolla. I'm sure there's probably, well, I don't want to sound too regional, but you know, people are always being tracked into doing that. And right now with the economy, they talk about the way the economy is. You know, we were just talking about it. They say the capitalists can't survive. You know, and the businesses can't survive. They could survive, but they just can't survive taking all the resources they do and having their private jets. So if it comes down to their private jets and us eating, it's going to be their private jets. And that's one of the things we have to get across to our youth. But we have to know that this is something that's happening all over the world. I mean, probably in Latin America, the only place that's not happening is Cuba, Venezuela, hopefully El Salvador after the elections, and a few other, very few other places. I mean, but that is part of a world system. So yes, you know, and I just want to say, finally, you know, we understand that capitalism is the issue, but capitalism, let's face it, was built off colonialism. If they hadn't came here and raped what's now known as the Southwest, to me it's the Northwest. If they haven't gone and taken everything out of Africa, if they hadn't done all that, they would not have had the money to make their industrial revolution. So the key to overthrowing capitalism to us is to attack imperialism and attack colonialism. They said it to you the other day, right? They can't recover without a war.
Yeah.
So let's shut down their guns, man. Let's not give them a war.
Teacher not our teacher, but one of our teachers here in California, right from California, was saying how other teachers were pointing at him and laughing at his activist shirt. And then over here we're talking about how we need to get our teachers on the same boat with the students. And I think that it's really important for us to realize that it is important to get our students on the same boat, but also teachers. I'm part of a Cal State University teaching program, and we're never taught this. In a classroom, they teach us all this hands-on with students and the standards and how to apply them. This is never mentioned. Never social justice, never give the power to your children, to the children. So I think it's very important to start reaching out to those future teachers, because they're the ones that are going to be able to help those students. Rather than criticizing them or saying, oh, they're not helping us, or they're saying this and they're wrong, better to get them into our boat, dialoguing with them, letting them know that, why are we doing this? Why do we believe in this? Because a lot of them are not guilt, they shouldn't be put at guilt for what's going on, because they are oppressed too. They didn't just acquire that from saying, oh, I want to be superior to the students, or this is the way I want to teach. They have never been exposed to any other way. I've been lucky to be exposed to this that's going on right now, because my boyfriend's a Chicano Latino students major. But if I would have not been exposed to that, I would have gone into a classroom the same way that all these teachers are going into a classroom.
Colonization.
And to finalize this, I wanted to tell these kids here that they're not monsters, because monsters has a negative connotation in our society. They're giants. They are helping us.
But it is, and I will say on the monster one, it is negative to the system.
Yeah.
So to them, that's what they think. You know, yeah.
They're giants to humanity.
No, I know.
What would we call it? We just people worship.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Rudy Chavez is my name. I taught at Belmont High School for 22 years, and subsequently went to Mexico for 4 years doing human rights work in central Mexico, Mexico City, along the border. Came back, and I've spent the last year and a half in the Republic of South Central Los Angeles, teaching and observing as a substitute. Some observations. I think that one of the greatest obstacles that we have for individual and group liberation international is discourse, a fancy word, and the references to how we talk. And one of the things I think that we're lacking, we need to work with all of us, is across the board is common glossaries and vocabularies of what we're talking about, because we can preach to the choir a lot of times. Expression is we're talking to people who already are at a certain consciousness, critical consciousness. We'll bring out Marx and Engels and Lenin and Paulo Freire and so forth, and people are saying, well, even many people who come out of universities, they say, well, what are you talking about? Even folks that are studying social justice don't realize that maybe you're studying more social injustice rather than social justice. The construction of commerce systems, mercantilism, call it what you will, capitalism, we often say capitalist. It's like when somebody calls you a dirty Mexican or a dirty Salvadoreño or a dirty nigger, it simply causes a lot of times a certain reaction. And people have asked me for all my life, practically, are you a communist? And I said, well, I have no idea what that means, in fact. You know, I'm actually an English teacher, a citizenship teacher, many other things. And I teach what I teach, and there's different strategies for teaching and for explaining to some. I love Coca-Cola, and I love Twinkies and hot dogs and Tommy burgers and you know, Bolsho Loco. We say Bolsho Loco in Guadalajara. But the point being that we're all part of the system, and we are a construction. We are a social cultural construction, material construction, and to work with deconstructing a story, students will say, "What is that?" A lot of people tell me, "You talk like kind of crazy sometimes." And I said, "Well, it's not my fault. I taught high school for 20 years." And, you know, we say, in Spanish, they say, pelo chino is curly hair. Pelo chino in Mexican Spanish. Central American Salvadoreño Spanish is colocho. So we don't have a common vocabulary, and the Salvadorians say, in this case, you know, my word is correct. And the Mexicans say, well, you're stupid because my word is correct. It's chino. And chino means Chinese, and I never saw a Chinese, I call them with curly hair. It actually comes from where? Africa. So we have a lot of commonalities, but we don't have a common vocabulary, a common glossary, not even for teaching liberation. What is liberation? And that's, I think, where we need to really, as a base, is to understand ourselves. And this, I have recently been spending some time in Koreatown, and I went to buy tea the other morning, and they said, tea? We don't sell tea. In the morning, actually my sister wanted tea, I was going to make coffee. They said there were restaurants open 24 hours and cyber cafes open 24 hours a day. It was incredible, like New York. And she wanted tea. We went to 3 places and they said tea. They looked at us strange. Well, you can buy tea, but you have to sit and drink tea. So these cultural differences, and differences, gender, the isms that, you know, separate us and bifurcate us and whatever words we want to use. Critical concepts. Mexico City has a population of 22 million people, and Los Angeles County has 12 million. I was substituting at Belmont yesterday at the corner of 3rd and Whitmer. You know, somebody got shot. A Guatemalan man, tamale seller because he would not be paying rent. And Lorena and Olympic last night, 3 people got killed in the housing project. Somebody says low intensity. It's a war, and we're in the middle of that. And we have to ourselves, all of us, kind of like contextualize, and work with that and say, how do we communicate with each other? You know, the ethnic groups in Los Angeles is an incredible place. It's a laboratory. I think it's incredible that this conference is here in the middle of all this democracy movement and such migration and everything else coming together. And it's very key here. But again, I think to go back, we need to develop the common glossaries. We say capitalism. What is capitalism? I picked up some little booklets on workshops that they have, apparently in finance for high school students. And I asked them, where is the market economy cartoon? I love cartoons books. And just to say that we need the materials to fit the occasion. And the teachers and the students that are, I'm not sure how many students are registered here, but there are 60 high schools. I think it's a potential critical mass is high school key. So like each one teach one, that sort of thing. And certainly the teachers, important who teachers are doing, and the parents and everybody else are coming together. But basic glossary is, a recommendation that we work for developing that and moving forward with.
Okay, so thank you. We have 5 minutes. is, so, if you want, we have a little packet on the social justice course. If you're interested in that, make sure you sign your name in the signing sheet, and we'll send it electronically. We have 5 minutes for a few questions,
Yeah,
so.
go ahead.
Well, I noticed that you have up there a lack of parental consciousness as an issue, and I just want to say that I've been teaching in LA schools for 27 years in the adult division. And I don't know what it's like in San Diego, but in LA Unified, we have 300,000 students a year in adult education who are the people you're talking about. They're working here in the sweatshops in LA. They have kids in the LA schools. They're facing a situation where they're sending money to their families in other countries, the Philippines, Mexico, Guatemala. They're dealing with the fact that their families have 6 different statuses in 7 different people. Papers, no papers, green cards, citizens. So I think that if you're thinking about education, because if you look at all those revolutions you've been talking about, the Cuban Revolution did adult education, the Nicaraguan Revolution did adult education, Freire was about adult education. So I think it's really, really important to reach out to the entire families who are also in struggle for their own educations and connect that to, because it's great to see all the youth here and the young people, but people are struggling at every stage and age of life in this society from, every year you face different aspects of it.
Any more questions?
All right, well, thank you for being here.